Stacey Castor, born Stacey Danielle, was born on July 24, 1967, in New York in 1985. At the age of 17, she met her first husband, Michael Wallace. The couple quickly fell in love, married, and had their first daughter, Ashley. 3 years later, in 1988, they welcomed their second daughter, Bree. They lived in a small town called Whippoorwill, New York. Stacey worked as an emergency dispatcher, while Michael worked as a mechanic. Despite their hard work, the family didn't have much extra money. Michael, while loving, seemed to favor the youngest daughter, Bree, while Stacey was closer to their eldest, Ashley. Despite their close family bond, Stacey and Michael's relationship began to deteriorate over time. In November of 1999, Stacey confided in a friend that she was considering a divorce. She said she wanted to leave Michael, but planned to wait until after the Christmas holiday to avoid affecting their children, and would file for divorce in the new year. However, in December 1999, Michael suddenly became ill. He often felt dizzy and spent most of his time lying down, either on the bed or the couch. Michael went to the doctor and explained that he always felt drunk, even though he hadn't had a drop of alcohol. The doctor diagnosed him with an ear infection and prescribed some medication. On Christmas Eve, December 24, 1999, Michael attended a family dinner at his mother's house. The family was concerned when they noticed his health had taken a sharp decline. His face and limbs were swollen. However, when they asked if he was okay, Michael just shrugged it off, saying he wasn't feeling great, but probably had a cold, nothing serious. Unfortunately, Michael was wrong. On January 11, 2000, Ashley came home from school to find her father still lying on the couch as usual, but this time, she heard him make a strange noise. He raised his arm and then let it drop. That was the last time Michael moved. Ashley approached him and noticed his legs had turned a dark purple. Panicking, she immediately called her mother. Michael was rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. Doctors believed he died from a heart attack. However, to determine the exact cause, they needed to perform an autopsy. Stacey refused, claiming that Michael didn't want to be touched or cut open, and that performing an autopsy would be disrespectful to his soul. Stacey told everyone that Michael would have wanted them to be happy and move on, rather than mourning his death, and true to her word, Stacey never cried after her husband's passing. Ashley always believed her mother didn't cry because she didn't want her daughters to see her in pain. The truth about Michael's death seemed to be buried with him. Stacey, now a widow with 2 young daughters, received a $55,000 life insurance payout from Michael's death. After renovating their home, she took her daughters on trips and gradually returned to being a cheerful and close mother to them. Stacey was now ready to start a new chapter in her life. In 2001, in the town of Liverpool, New York, David Castor was the owner of a thriving air conditioning company. David had recently gone through a divorce, and his only son was living with his ex-wife. He was enjoying a comfortable life in a large, well-equipped house. Then David met Stacey, a woman he saw as a loving mother to her 2 young daughters. David and Stacey's relationship developed quickly. However, Ashley and Bree, Stacey's daughters, were not fond of David at all. They didn't want anyone replacing their father so soon. On August 16, 2003, less than 2 years after they met, David and Stacey surprised many by getting married. What was strange, however, was that no one from David's family was invited to the wedding, not even his parents or his son. Stacey Wallace became Mrs. Stacey Castor, and she and her 2 daughters moved in with David in Liverpool. Their material lifestyle improved significantly. But Ashley and Bree still struggled to accept their new stepfather. There was constant tension between them. Despite this, David remained patient, treating them as his own daughters. Gradually, Ashley and Bree began to open up to him and feel his love. However, ironically, while the relationship between David and the girls improved, the relationship between Stacey and David began to deteriorate. The arguments between the couple became more frequent. Tensions reached a peak in August 2005 when David suspected Stacey of having an affair. One afternoon, Stacey called the sheriff's office to report that her husband had locked himself in their bedroom after a heated argument. He had been in there all day, refusing to open the door or respond to any sounds coming from inside. Stacey mentioned that David had recently shown signs of depression and explained that they had argued for 7 hours the previous day. According to Stacey's account, David had been drinking heavily. Afterward, he took a bottle of hard liquor into the room and locked himself in. The police immediately responded and broke down the door, only to find David dead inside, his body fully reclined. On the small bedside table, there was a glass with a green liquid inside, only half full. Beside it were a bottle of hard liquor and a bottle of juice on the floor. They also found a bottle of antifreeze lying on its side. At first, the scene suggested that David had ingested a lethal dose of antifreeze after locking himself in the room. However, a different officer discovered a turkey baster in the kitchen. Trash. The baster is a kitchen tool used to extract juices from roasting turkey in order to keep the meat moist and seasoned. Typically, individuals considering ending their lives wouldn't use such an item in a distressed state. Feeling something was off, the police collected all the evidence and sent it to the forensic department. The forensic results showed that Stacey's fingerprints were found on the glass containing the antifreeze and the turkey baster. Meanwhile, David's DNA was found on the tip of the baster. The police began to suspect that Stacey had used the baster to force David to ingest the toxic substance and staged his death. They also obtained a warrant to search Stacey's phone and found searches related to antifreeze and methods of poisoning others. Moreover, it was suspicious that just before David passed away, he had removed his son from his ex-wife from the will and left all of his assets to Stacey. Investigators monitored Stacey's home as well as the graves of the two deceased husbands. The two had been buried next to each other as per Stacey's request. The detectives believed that if Stacey truly loved her deceased husbands, she would have eventually visited their graves. However, Stacey never visited the graves. The investigators then concluded that the only way to prove Stacey's responsibility for both deaths was to exhume the body of Michael Wallace, her former husband. They obtained a warrant to do so. The toxicology results revealed that Michael Wallace had also been poisoned with antifreeze. In September 2007, Stacey became frantic as suspicions about the deaths of both her husbands continued to grow. When she learned that the police had exhumed Michael's body and found traces of antifreeze, she devised a dark and shocking plan no one could have imagined. On the first day of Ashley's school year, investigators visited the school to question her about Michael's death and informed her that he had been poisoned. Ashley, in a state of confusion and emotion, called her mother. Soon after, Stacey invited Ashley to their home in Liverpool to have a drink together. Ashley agreed, as Stacey was not only her mother, but also her best friend. The next day, Stacey again invited Ashley for a drink, offering her a beverage that tasted awful. At first, Ashley declined, but after Stacey insisted, she hesitantly drank it. 17 hours later, Ashley was found by her sister Bree, unconscious on the bed. Stacey had vomited all over the bed and didn't respond when Bree shook her. Bree, in a panic, immediately called their mother to dial 911. Once again, the sheriff's department received an emergency call from Stacey. The police immediately rushed to Stacey's home. In Ashley's bedroom, they found a bottle of painkillers and a bottle of liquor. Stacey claimed that Ashley had been drinking and implied that she had intentionally overdosed on the pills. A suicide note was found next to Ashley, in which she confessed to killing both her biological father and her stepfather. Stacey quickly took the note and handed it over to the medical staff. Fortunately, after being treated by doctors, Ashley was saved. Toxicology tests revealed that Ashley had ingested a high dose of painkillers, which could have been fatal if she hadn't been rushed to the hospital in time. When Ashley regained consciousness, she was questioned by the police about the murders and the suicide note. She said that the last thing she remembered was her mother offering her a drink, something Stacey had never done before. Ashley insisted that she did not write the note and felt confused by the police's questions. Over the next 2 years, investigators gathered more evidence against Stacey. In 2007, Stacey was arrested on charges of second-degree murder for David's death and attempted murder and defamation for the poisoning of Ashley. The suicide note, which was written on Ashley's computer, was actually written by Stacey when Michael, Ashley's biological father, passed away. She was only 12 years old. During her testimony in court, Ashley firmly stated that she did not kill either her biological father or her stepfather and did not write the suicide note. Police believe that Stacey had used a turkey baster to force David to ingest antifreeze, then staged the scene to look like a suicide. They believed that money was one of Stacey's main motives for killing both of her husbands. She wanted to collect life insurance and inherit their assets. Just before David passed away, she also forged his will to exclude his son from the inheritance. On March 1, 2009, Stacey was convicted of second-degree murder. She was sentenced to 25 years in prison for David's death and an additional 25 years for attempting to murder Ashley. For the forgery of the will, Stacey was sentenced to 5 years in prison. The judge remarked that he had never seen a mother try to kill her own child to frame them for the crime she committed. He declared Stacey a one-of-a-kind criminal case, like none he had seen before. During the trial, Ashley told the judge that she hated her mother for ruining so many lives, but that she still loved her because Stacey was her mother. Ashley said that all she wanted was an apology from Stacey. However, Stacey had never apologized to anyone. She still insisted that Ashley had psychological issues and was the guilty one. Months passed since the sentencing, and Ashley chose to move forward and live a happy life rather than allowing the pain of the past to torment her. She refused to let resentment take over her heart. Instead, she sought forgiveness and unconditional love from the good people who had always been there for her. She lived with a heart full of hope, choosing to do good deeds as a way to show that despite everything, she would continue moving forward, no matter how life had tested her.